Do with that? You're going to record it?
I am, and then I'm going to upload it to YouTube.
You rock.
Because they're important questions, yeah. So and I have full battery, so this should be good.
How do I spell his last name?
Beckwith. Is it better with my light on and now or off?
Well, come back in the picture for a minute. There we,
About the same.
it's about the same. Whatever's comfortable for you.
This is off, and then this is on. Probably off.
Off, yeah.
Okay. And the audio is pretty good, I think.
Great. Yeah, the audio on this end is awesome.
Great.
And we've got you full screen. Got a nice big flat screen TV in here.
Okay.
And hooked up.
Regarding audio, if you're
Behind me?
filming that,
Uh-huh.
I'm just wondering if we want him a little bit louder if
Just
possible.
for the image,
Yeah,
right?
turn them up.
To how we're going to get the.
You're right. I'm going to turn up the audio a little bit. Okay, let's try that.
He has to say something.
Okay. I have to say something, I guess.
Yeah.
You test.
Turn it up some more. Okay, keep talking.
Testing, audio checking, audio testing, 1, 2, 3.
Very good. Keep it up.
Is that better? Let's try again.
Hello there.
Yeah,
Hello there.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay, so thank you so much, Paul, for doing this.
Oh, you're welcome.
Really appreciate it. I know we've, been
Yeah.
talking on Facebook for a while, and we've talked about Skyping.
Yeah, no, it's nice to actually meet to a person, right?
It is, yeah.
It's been a long time back and forth. I missed some of your articles and so on. Yeah, it's been probably, at least a year, or maybe a year and a half, I would guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been probably about a year or two. I know I was really glad when I we actually found each other on Facebook. I found Paul through, I think, AMAG was where I first started.
Yes, you were investigating it to do some examiner articles, I think. That's right, yeah.
And for those in the audience, AMAG is Arctic Methane Emergency Group.
Yes.
Arctic.
Yeah, I can tell you a little bit about it, or you could ask me.
That'd be great. Could we, I guess, start out with sort of an official, maybe, introduction? Give us a little bit of your background.
Oh, okay. You want me to talk? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought you had said that. You were going to do it.
Well, I was good. Yeah, I thought about it, but then I thought I should let you talk first. And
Yeah. Okay, so I'm Paul Beckwith. I'm at the University of Ottawa. I'm a part-time professor. I teach climatology, a climatology meteorology course, which is a second-year geography course. I've taught it twice, and I'll be teaching it again in September. So I have about 100 students or so. A nice mixture of people. Maybe 3/4 of the people have taken some sort of science course in their lifetime, and the other quarter or so have not taken any science. So it's an introductory course on climatology. So I talk about sort of the fundamentals and basics of climate and weather. And, of course, I talk about what's happening today, extreme weather events, how it's related to climate change. I talk about cutting-edge research with them and so on. I'm also working full-time, doing full-time research as towards my PhD thesis. My thesis topic is abrupt climate change, which I chose a number of years ago before any of these drastic changes were occurring. Well, I shouldn't really say that because I've been following climate change for quite a while. It was a career change for me to go and study climate climate change on a formal basis. I've been following it informally for a long time. What I did do is I went through engineering physics years ago at McMaster University in Hamilton, then worked for, then I did a master's degree in laser physics. So engineering physics, laser physics. Then I worked in laser research for a number of years. I worked in California, actually in Thousand Oaks, at Rockwell International, the Rockwell International Science Center, doing research on new types of a field called nonlinear optics, which does pertain. I mean, I think the climate system is going through nonlinear changes right now. And then I worked in industry for a number of different years. I worked in laser companies. I worked, as I said, for Rockwell. I worked in the software computer industry. I worked for ATI Technologies doing software testing. Taught chess for a number of years, traveled around the world pursuing chess, playing different tournaments and so on. So I've had quite a varied background, and I just decided a number of years ago, about 3 or almost 4 years ago, that I would that I'm so interested in climate change. It's what's more important. You know, let's study it. Let's learn everything I can about it. But from a systems point of view, I saw a big failure or a big disconnect or something. I mean, the scientists, information that the scientists were coming out with wasn't getting to the public for the first part, or it wasn't being the public, you know, for various reasons. But also, I found scientists studying it were separated into different compartments, like glaciology or methane or atmospheric physics, and they didn't really communicate enough, so they didn't see the big picture of things.
Yeah,
so,
the big picture.
And also, they were much too conservative. There's not enough. You know, I mean, they would say something, and then 6 months later, what they said is completely shown to be way too conservative. Like if they look, you know, in terms of sea ice decline or methane level increase, or, you know, effects on food supply, you know, and pick any topic, and it seems that the climate system is changing a lot more than the, you know, scientists have been saying. So for all these reasons, yeah, I like school, I like studying, I like reading,
well, you have a really interesting background. I think it's like you said, it's that big picture that you look at.
The big picture is important, and you know, I'm an engineer, so you know, I did the 4-year, and so I did a lot of different areas of study, which all help, like thermodynamics, you know, how heat transfer, you know, all of these things, like how quickly does ice melt, what are the mechanisms, how does the overall heat transfer, you know, between heat difference between the equator and the poles, move the heat around, you know, there's a lot of physics if you get into the nuts and bolts of meteorology, there's a lot of physics and the computer models and so on. So I've had all that training and background, and then you know, laser physics is even very applicable because I was looking at infrared lasers, CO2 lasers, actually, ammonia lasers. So I did, actually, for my master's degree, I worked with photochemists, you know, and we were looking at absorption, infrared absorption in different molecules, and of course that's exactly how the greenhouse gas effect works. You get the absorption of different wavelengths of light. So, you know, so it's interesting that, you know, my background is, you know, I find that it's been very, very useful to me to understand, you know, climate science.
And you're very
good picture of it.
And you're really social too, in the way that you talk about it. You know, I like to call you like the everyday scientist, everyman scientist, because, you know, when I listen to your YouTubes and I listen to you talk, I can understand what you're saying because you break it down, you know, into understandable terms. And I think that's been that big disconnect too, is that a lot of people can't start to learn because they don't understand, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of the lingo.
I think I mean, people have told me that, and I think that comes about. I probably wouldn't have been able to do it as I can now. Right when I, you know, was in undergrad and doing the masters, because you get kind of in a kind of framework or mold where, you know, you're very technical. But, you know, I've had a lot of different life experiences in other areas. I mean, you know, one of the jobs that I did, I play a lot of chess, so I actually became the manager of a store in Toronto, you know, retail and organizing chess in schools for kids, and I would organize 30 different schools or 40 different schools around Toronto with chess teachers and, you know, so on. And I did that myself for a while, did the teaching. So, you know, and also you know, at JDS Uniphase in Ottawa, I was a product line manager. So I had to do forecasts, I had to do sales stuff, I had to do marketing stuff, I had to do, you know, all the business aspects of developing a new product. So we had nothing, you know, and I was product line manager, so I had some ideas and on projects and got some additional projects that were already in the works, and then I had to develop them through the research group, the engineering group, the manufacturing group, all the way up. So that was just running around talking to people and
Right.
the project going. So all of these types of things help. So I think it's important for people to kind of, like, everybody's got a different skill set, right? And the climate change issue, the climate change problem requires, you know, it's such a multidisciplinary, multifaceted problem. So it doesn't matter what your skill set is. You know, I think everybody knows what their where, or if you don't, you might want to think about it. But what are you passionate about? What are you really, what are your skills? What are you really good at? And, you know, there's some aspect that you could use for, you know, educating people about climate change. Like Dorsi yourself, I mean, you know, setting up this art show, I mean, it's perfect, right? You know, there's a rapper who, you know, has contacted me, and he does raps. You know, a lot of his words in his raps are, you know, they're very, one is on genetics, one is on, you know, he does different topics, and he wants to do something on climate change. So I said, sure, you know. So so there's all of these different ways, but I do. You know, I've been saying for a long time that there'll be a tipping point in human behavior on the climate change issue, and I think we're getting very close, and I think it's because the extreme weather events are taking off. And I had to chuckle because a couple of weeks ago I saw Al Gore actually use that phrase, a tipping point in human behavior. And I'm thinking, I could show that this was my phrase from 2 years ago.
Copyrighted.
And I also will lay claim, I didn't trademark it, but I made the comment. I was interviewed by, I think it was Global News or something, a couple of years ago in Ottawa, and I used the term, you know, what happens in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic, unlike Vegas.
Right.
And the guy, you know, they went with that quote, and then, you know, from time to time I see it popping up.
I've heard that before.
And I think that's my phrase.
That's my quote.
Trademark it to you. The thing is, I learned from Elizabeth May that if you want to lay claim to everything that you do and say, it really holds you back. you know, if what you do and say, you don't care about other people using it, you know, you don't care about, you know, bringing you fame and fortune. You just throw it out there and then you move on to something else, and you're not encumbered. You know, it doesn't slow you down. So, you know, I mean, whereas the typical scientist mode is, you know, do your research, don't say anything about it until it's published, and then have a press release maybe if it's newsworthy. But, you know, hold all that information to yourself until you get it published, right? This is kind of the mode. And this is no good for climate change, because you know, the system is changing very, very fast. So this is one of the things that I do with social media, and in terms of talking to people, is like I'd be terrible at poker because all of my cards are on the table at all times. You know, if I think of a new idea, you know, like, you know, if you look at some of my YouTube videos, for example, there's a YouTube video on Antarctica, the southern hemisphere.
Yes.
So the sea ice is growing there, and I think you know why, and I thought of it, and then I did a video that night, you know, trying to explain the connections as I saw them. You know, I think you know, I think a lot of people are worried about, you know, if they're wrong on something, or, you know, where they're worried about their reputation, they're worried about, you know, I don't those things I don't even think about. I mean, I try to figure out, you know, it's very simple what I do. I try to figure out the different pieces of the puzzle of the climate system.
Okay. Go back
and I try to see how they fit together, how they interact, and through that, I'm trying to determine where the system is going. I'm trying to make predictions, short term, longer term. Where do I think the system's going? What do I think is going to happen? You know, and how is it going to affect people? How is it going to affect our food supply? How is it going to affect society? How is it going to affect, you know, security? You know, all of these things. And, you know, I the last couple of days has been pretty depressing. Not because of climate change, but, you know, just today we had 298 people, you know, in this past commercial airliner, you know, this 777 Malaysian airliner shot down over the Ukraine. You know, bodies falling out of the sky, horrendous photographs. We also have Israel invading the Gaza Strip, you know, ground invasion. Yesterday we had 4 kids on a beach just killed. It looks like they were like I don't, you know, I don't want. This is not the point of it, but, you know, these things, like, we've had there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of you know, sad things going on, and, you know, these things get huge headlines as they should. But I would argue, you know, that the climate change problem, it's having much, much more impact on society, on people, you know, and it will have way, way more impact in the future. And we know it's very, very disruptive to economies, to people, to the entire planet. And yet it's more of a, you know, it's sort of a background thing. You know, it's happening very fast, and, you know, at times there's big floods or there's droughts, and, you know, I mean, it's not hitting home with people the same way. It's not like a gut visceral thing, you know, as the last 2 days in the news events have been very sort of visceral and very, you know, in your face. I mean, if you look at some of the images of the carnage, it's just horrifying. And with social media, you know, it's posted. A lot of it is posted. I mean, whether or not you like it, you know, if you have a lot of Facebook followers or Facebook friends and Twitter people, then it comes across your feeds, you know, and these things really, you know, are gut wrenching. And I would argue that, you know, I mean, climate change is going to be this way. Like, you know, this California drought continues. There's flooding in other places, like in the plains in Canada, which is the breadbasket of Canada. You know, a lot of the planting is finished a lot of the crops are completely trashed this year because of the massive flooding. Flooding in South America, same thing, many crops, you know, not doing well. Europe, you know, a lot of vegetables are grown there, lots of flooding. So, you know, all we need is a combination of synchronization of these events, and food prices are going to be, well, food shortages, and food prices will double. You know, they'll double or triple in a very short period of time, you know, less than a year, say. And then people will be screaming bloody murder. They'll be saying, you know, governments, what are you going to do? You know, so, you know, I think our role as trying to educate the public on this is, you know, we're trying to avoid this sudden, you know, we're trying to, we'd much rather transition into people understanding that climate change is a huge problem. And, you know, ease into, you know, and that way, you know, if food prices double or triple, people aren't so surprised. They start to, you know, do things, right? But if it comes out of the blue, it hits people, then, you know, the response is much more difficult. So I think, you know, so, you know, people that are, you know, there's a period of time, you know, when people that are trying to educate the public on climate change, for example, you know, can get very discouraged. You know, politicians like Australia cancels their carbon tax, and you know, I mean, it's like we're going, you know, 2 steps forward and sometimes 3 steps back. And we want to only go 1 step back. So I think the climate, you know, it looks like, and I'll do a blog very soon. I've spent the last couple of days I've spent on my roof doing shingling, and I've spent you know, repairing some poles, and I've got a 100-year-old house, doing pruning, because a lot of the trees were banging against the house, damaging shingles and things. So up in trees, up on the roof, and you know, I go off and you know, and it gives me a chance to think. You know, I'm up in the tree and I'm thinking, well, maybe there's this connection with Antarctica, or maybe the El Nino isn't developing as quickly because of this, or so I just kind of, you know, I don't restrict what I read about climate change. I try to read and understand all the different areas, you know, which is a lot of reading. I like reading. You know, you need to do that, and try to put a big sort of picture together. And so, you know, I'll do a blog on, you know, where I think things are going on that sort of, you know, aspect. Like, so, you know, I mean, how much time do we have before we get wrenching changes? I think you know, the biggest indicator of that would be follow the what's happening up in the Arctic, what's happening to the sea ice volume, because some of the models show that by, you know, within 2 or 3 or 4 years we could have an ice-free Arctic in the summer, end of the summer, and then if after that happens within a year or 2, it could be, you know, ice-free for 2 or 3 months of the year, and within 3 or 4 years it could be ice-free 6 months of the year, most of the summer. And then, you know, if you follow some of the logic, then it could become ice-free year-round, and then temperatures will skyrocket because we're replacing this white reflective cap in the Arctic with dark water, which absorbs a lot more energy.
Ask him about the methane gas.
You know, all of the energy coming in from the sun, you don't have to melt ice or anything, it just raises temperature. It's a lot easier just to raise temperature of water than it is to have a phase change from, say, ice to liquid. So I don't know. So, you know, I mean, a lot of the, so I try to just explain, you know, in basic, plain, everyday language as I progress on my journey of study through abrupt climate change. You know, I try to be kind of a filter and, you know, let people know what some of the key, you know, most important things are.
Thank you, Paul. David was just mentioning when him and I met here at the gallery, he's actually has a few pieces in the show.
Yes, I have several pieces in the show. I've traveled around the world.
Why don't you come sit over here? I'm going to have David come sit here. He's an interesting fellow. You're going to like talking to him. And he wants to talk about methane, so maybe he can introduce himself, too. Make sure this is still going.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us this time, Paul.
Oh, you're very, very welcome.
I've never been in a position where I've looking into a computer and talking to someone.
No, it's technology is, it's funny, like, this is new for you, but after tonight it won't be new again, right? The next time you do it, it'll be like, oh, I can do this, it's funny technology. I mean, my kids just don't have an understanding of, what it was like without their devices.
Well, I invented the internet in a way. I was using it back in the 60s and the 70s. Yes. Yeah. And building communications networks. Now, I've been retired for 17 years and I've been able to travel around the world. In fact, all my life I've traveled around the world. And I was in Antarctica. And there were scientists on board of the ship. And we were looking at the melting and the icebergs caving off. One of the scientists commented on the frozen methane gas that's in Antarctica.
Yes.
And if that rises, those are literally submerged bergs.
Yes.
Have we really considered what is going to happen to this planet when those icebergs come to the surface? Now you have, I understand, have been studying the methane gas that's floating to the surface in the Arctic.
Yes.
Tell me more about that, and I'm aware of what it will do to our atmosphere and what the heat ramifications is many times what the loss of ice shield is.
Yes. Now, as you said, I've been looking. I mean, most people that are concerned about methane, in terms of the short-term ramifications on human society and so on, is the Arctic, from the Arctic, just because the Arctic is warming if you go to the high Arctic, the Arctic's warming over a degree per decade. The global temperature might be something like 0.15 degree per decade. So the Arctic's warming, 6, 7, even 8 times, if you go to the high Arctic, faster than the rest of the planet.
Yes.
And this is causing this is a problem because it changes the temperature distribution on the planet.
And the Antarctic is doing the same.
Has to change the jet streams and leads to this extreme weather. Now, the Antarctic is a lot colder, right? The volume of ice is that much larger, and because of the geography, because there's no land blocking the flow of ocean currents, they can sweep completely